What's good, Illini Nation? It's your man in the middle, Deon Thomas, bringing you nothing but the best as always. Today, we got one of the best young journalists in the game joining us to talk some Illini and Big Ten hoops. And we even going to act like Dr. Fauci. We're going to have a little COVID discussion here. But got my man Derek Piper joining tonight. You know, you may know Derek from his radio show with Lon, Tay and Piper. You may know him from 24/7 Sports. Oh my God, for the last 7 to 8 years, he's been covering Illini sports. So for sure, you know this man, and that's why he's sitting in the chair on Champagne on Ice. DP, what's up, baby?
What's up, Deon? Really honored to be with you, man. Been around Champagne, been around a lot of basketball for a long time. My mom still reminds me, she goes, you know who your favorite player was back in the day? Your very first favorite player. His name was Deon Thomas. So this is really an honor. She's definitely gonna be watching this one. So I appreciate you having me on.
Oh, no, truly a pleasure. And Mrs. Piper, thank you for reminding him of what great players look like. No, I'm just kidding. We've had a long line of great players, but I'll tell you this. If you said I was your favorite as a young fella, I appreciate that, man. As I tell everybody, I couldn't do what I do without the people that love and support us as athletes, as players. You know, I think there's far too many people that forget that sometimes. And that's one of the reasons you know this young man, you've talked to him. Kofi Coburn is one of the best kids I've ever met.
Yeah, he's awesome. It's a pleasure to talk to him. Really, we've been blessed, Io being in the program here recently, and Kofi, obviously, Curbelo awesome. Just guys with these amazing stories, and you just got to appreciate what Kofi is. I mean, on the basketball court, it's phenomenal, his dominance, and you just kind of take it for granted almost sometimes. You're like 15 and 13, and you kind of nitpick certain things. You're like, this guy is so good, and is there going to be another guy like him? I don't know, but his story coming from Jamaica and just his perspective and how much he just really just embraced the spotlight and the stardom that he has on this campus. He loves interacting with people, and man, he's such a joy to be around. He's got such a positive outlook, and but in the middle, I wouldn't want anything to do with him. Deon, you might be able to do something with that guy, but I don't know. He's a load.
I'll tell you that you're right. He is a load. And to have watched him grown from his freshman year to his now junior year, you can definitely see all of the changes that has come, positive changes that have taken place in this young man's game. And I'll tell you this, I don't think I could guard Kofi. I'm not going to even lie, but I know he wouldn't be able to guard me either. And the big fella might not want to hear that. My job would be to try to get Kofi to sit on the bench by having him foul me enough times that he's not on the floor. Because I do know this. That's the most dominant player right now in college basketball. I don't care what era you put him in. So I have to say, I'd have been in a world of trouble. I'd have held my own. You know that, DP.
I'm sure you would, man. I'm sure you would. Arizona actually held their own too, which you got to give some credit to them, being able to make things tough on Kofi. But there's not many teams like that, being able to use that length, athleticism. Koloko, with his quick twitch length, was able to block some of his shots. I don't know who else is really going to be able to do that to him, but I saw Kofi coming out of high school, and this was a guy that wasn't in the best of shape and needed to work on some things with his game. And he was overpowering in terms of his presence, but back to the original point of how much he's grown, just his willingness to let Adam Fletcher push him with his conditioning. And I mean, his back to the basket game, this was a guy that you wanted just to catch and dunk when he first came in. Now he can go right hook, he can go drop step. Offensively, he can really be a big time problem. Defensively, still got to clean some things up, pick and roll coverage and everything. But I mean, he's one of the best out there in terms of pure physicality, as dominant as anybody in the post.
I mean, he is truly a baby Shaq, as we remember when that guy came on campus, man. But his growth has been amazing. But watching this team grow as they grow together, they lost their team captain, leader, and probably the guy, glue guy. He was a little bit of everything in Io DeSumo. And some of these struggles, but, I think Illini Nation doesn't, not just Illini Nation, the nation and the press as a whole, forget how good this team is. They've lost to some really good teams. I mean, you go and lose to Marquette. Marquette's going to be in the tournament. You lose to Cincinnati. Cincinnati's going to be in the NCAA tournament. You lose to Arizona, who will probably be pushing, for a national championship. That team is so good, and I think even underrated. What you've seen so far in this team as they continue to grow, What steps have you seen that you witnessed that, and what steps do they need to take as they move forward?
I think that offensively, it's just learning how to play without Curbelo because you had so much pick and roll action, and that really goes back to last year where most of their offense was put Kofi as the roll man and Io in the ball screen or Curbelo in the ball screen and operate off of that. You take Curbelo off the floor and you don't have a pure point guard out there. So it's finding a different way to go about it. Obviously, pressure defense had hurt them. It's particularly early on. You go back to Kansas City, think about Cincinnati, what they were able to do. But now playing in the half court, they're playing slower, which I know that Brad would still like to be able to push it fast once Curbelo gets back, but playing slower, not using the ball screen nearly as much. It's dumping into Kofi and letting him make decisions, which again, that's a growth point for Kofi and understanding that he can be a passer. He had 5 assists last year, the entire season. Now he has more awareness. He knows where the double's coming from. He knows who's open. And I think initially it was him making a pass out for a three. Now you're seeing this team, one pass out can lead to 2, 3, 4. It pops around the perimeter, and they have a great chemistry about them being able to find the open man. Brad talked about after the last game, turning down a really good shot for a great shot, and they're shooting the lights out from three, man. I mean, the tear that they're on from long range has really elevated them and makes them a problem, hitting 18 threes against St. Francis, hit 16 against Arizona. So that's been a big growth point for them, is just knocking down shots, and that creates a real big, problem for the defense to say, are we going to pack it in on Kofi and let those threes fall? Or are we going to try to get out there and leave one-on-one matchups for the big fella?
As we say, picking your poison when you on the court. But you mentioned the 18 threes in the last game. There was one play in particular that I loved. The ball went inside the Kofi. He kicked it out to the corner. It wasn't a cross-court pass. And then they re-entered the ball. He skipped it to the side, and it literally came all the way back around to Alfonso Plummer, who nailed the three in the corner. I mean, that shows growth. That shows trust. And you're right. Playing without Andre Curbelo, you could see the adjustment coach has made. He's actually even gone back to that, a little bit of that pinch post that he was running in his first year, and with a little wrinkle into it, with a double screen that's been happening on the other side of the floor, the opposite side. So it's been really good watching them really put this together. And I think they've done a tremendous job without having a really great point guard on the court.
Yeah, they definitely have. And I'd be curious in your thoughts, Deon, because I think once Andre gets back, what's that gonna look like? Is he gonna be someone that you're playing a lot in the pick and roll again? Or are you gonna be kind of that 4 around 1, where is he going to be a guy that's now just going to have to be able to hit that 3-pointer? Because I would imagine you're going to leave him, if you're on a scouting report, he's the guy, who's shooting 16% from 3 on his career, that you're probably going to help off of. How would you expect Illinois to adjust? I know we can't assume too much till Curbelo is ultimately back out there, but I'm just curious from a basketball perspective how that's going to look once he's out there.
Let me start off by saying this. One of the greatest things that a team can go through is early adversity. This team has gone through that with the injury to Curbelo, of course, Trent's multiple injuries. Then we had the flu bug ravaged this team for a while. So they had to learn different ways, different methods. So with your question, how do they fit Curbelo back in there? One, Curbelo's a better 3-point shooter today than he was last year. Now, his numbers may not tell that, because I think he's taken some bad shots. But when he's had the opportunity to get his feet set, step into it, and shoot the basketball, it's as pretty, almost, I don't say as pretty as as Granderson or one of those guys. Not that pretty, but it's a pretty jump shot, and it looks good. And it's going to also give him an opportunity to knock down a lot of threes. So what do? I think you go back to your pick and roll, because that's where he's at his most dangerous. That's where he's at his most, productive when it comes to kicking the ball to others. But you also have that element now that you can slow the ball down and run some of that pinch post. I think the biggest thing when Andre comes back is going to be Andre, and understanding, hey, I don't have to be Ayo Dosunmu. I can go back to doing what I was doing last year, trusting my teammates, kicking the ball and getting the ball inside to Kofi, moving off of him. So it's really going to be, and which I think is a great thing with him sitting over there watching, is, hey, okay, we can do this without me having to be the man. And I think that's also going to help him in the eyes of the NBA scouts, because those first few games, like I know, 7, 8, 9, 11 turnovers, you're not doing that at the next level. So your job first and foremost is to come in and make everyone else better. And I think he'll buy into that and understand that that's what's important. So that's what I'm expecting to see from him. And it just gives this team so much more flexibility to be able to play multiple ways. And that's Big Ten teams are going to be in trouble, because then you're not going to be able to press them as Iowa did. You're not going to be able to sink inside, as other teams have tried to do on Kofi, because now they're all confident in shooting the ball. The biggest thing is how he comes back, and if we can get Coleman Hawkins switched back on.
Yeah, for sure. And I think with Curbelo, how many easy baskets he just set Kofi up game after game of attracting the attention, just dumping it off and making that just an easy two. And I agree with you. I think his mentality and kind of his approach is going to be interesting. But the one good thing, while he's been sitting back and watching early on in the season, he felt the pressure, particularly when Kofi wasn't on the floor, of it's got to run through me. I'm carrying such a big weight to make things happen. Now he's been able to sit back and watch. This team's got a pretty good thing going right now. He's just got to play his role and let these guys do their thing and set them up. So I think that one thing that people maybe have forgotten, I'm not saying everybody, but with his turnover struggles this year, you go back to, if he's just the same player he was at the end of last season, forget all the talk of making steps forward and being, an elite player in college basketball, which I still think he can be. But if he was that same guy late last year, you pull up his last 10 games, which you're playing a lot of ranked teams, you're playing the Big Ten tournament. He was averaging 15 points, 5 or 6 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 turnovers. You can live with that, at least the positive ratio, and he's shooting over 50% from the field. So if he can just find a way to get back to being that guy, I think that would be such a valuable player, one of the best point guards out there. And to your point, Coleman Hawkins, a very talented player, a very versatile player, just needs to be more consistent, lock in a little bit more defensively, and just let things come. But then again, early sophomore year, he is not on an island in terms of guys still trying to figure it out this early in his career.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. And that's the reminder. I think that most of Illini Nation in the country, the experts have to understand is that, one, Andre Curbelo is a sophomore. He is a super talented sophomore, but he's still young. And the same thing as you just mentioned with Curtis. I almost said Curtis Granderson. Man, I've got baseball on the
baseball,
brain.
There you go.
Then it's not even baseball season. but with Coleman Hawkins, it's those young guys. And before we move on to some other guys, let's talk about the young guys. I have been, and I think you will probably agree with this, our freshmen, of course, Brendan is kind of caught in the numbers game right now. And even though he was Mr. Basketball in the state of Wisconsin, I thought he was going to be the one that needed the most time to catch up, because he's just playing against a totally different level of player than he's used to playing against. But what Luke Goody has shown, what RJ Melendez has shown, gives tremendous depth to this Illinois team. Now, you've been watching these guys since they've hit campus, as I did. What have you seen so far? I won't say your likes and dislikes, but what do you like so far about what they bring to the team and how they've looked since they've hit campus to you?
Yeah, Luke has clearly been the most impressive, and a guy that just hasn't seemed like he's needed a ton of transition. He doesn't look like a freshman out there. He doesn't make very many mistakes. I know a lot of fans have fallen in love with his competitiveness and just his mentality. He's not afraid, as Brad has mentioned, with certain competitors, that he's had to be able to step up and make a shot. And I think that really it was a guy that I watched throughout the AAU process. And as a junior, he was playing part-time football, part-time basketball, and his three-point jumper wasn't quite where he wanted it to be. And then as a senior, went full-time basketball, really worked on his body and shot it great. And that's really what we've seen as soon as he stepped on campus here at Illinois. And 44% for a freshman from three is really impressive right now. That's big time. And I think that he'll just continue to make strides forward. And I thought and looked at him as like a Matt McQuaid type of guy. You think about a Michigan State type of role player, and he has probably a higher ceiling than Matt. Like, you look down the road in terms of when he's an upperclassman. So that's been great. RJ has a lot of tools like athleticism, length. He's smooth with the basketball, for a guy that size. I think that defensively has a lot of upside. It's just one of those things that, similar to Coleman last year, you'd say maybe a year away from putting some more muscle on and really figuring it out. But he's a guy that can shoot it a little bit, can do a lot of different things. That's been impressive. And then even with Brandon, I think that the fact he's now buying into the defensive role, and I know that Brad always makes the joke, and it's true. I saw Trent as a high school prospect, didn't even need to play defense, didn't even think about defense. I mean, he was a big time scorer, and now Brandon's buying in to the fact that, hey, I got to play defense to get on the floor, and someone that is going to take some time, but I don't care. You put 35 points up on the guys at the YMCA, you can at least shoot it a little bit. So that's certainly in his DNA, and taking some time to figure out. But I like that those guys, their approach of not freaking out when some minutes don't come early. They're locked in and buying into this team.
Well, that's one of the things, and when you come in as a freshman, and I'll tell you, coming in as a highly touted player out of high school, and this is where Luke, and I think the football actually did him good. I think being a quarterback did him good because he had to be a leader. And as you mentioned, Illini Nation loves the fact that this kid goes out there and competes. He's not afraid. I give a lot of that credit to being the quarterback on a football team. You see, he's not afraid to throw his body around in there. That's from being sacked and tackled because he wasn't just a pocket guy. He would get out and run. I saw some of those videos and I was like, oh, okay. And I was really impressed by what he's done. And he's really taken the reins as he's come to campus. And I love it. And the first game, I forgot which game it was, but he was tied up with a bigger guy and was kind of slinging the bigger. I was like, okay, yeah, this kid is tough as nails. And you mentioned the percentage, you mentioned the numbers, spot on. Love the way this kid playing. I know a friend of mine is the assistant coach on RJ Melendez's high school team. So when we signed him, I called him and I'm like, Brad, what do you think about this kid? And he was like, Deon, he's a pro. He's like, you guys are gonna love everything about him. And he has not lied, boy. Love this kid. Love what he's doing, and just waiting to see how all three of them continue to grow, because you're right. You don't play defense for Brad Underwood. You don't play. And I've had some people come to me at the beginning of the year like, man, what's going on with Alfonso Plummer? Why isn't he playing? Why isn't he playing consistently? He was making a lot of mistakes in defense. And so after his first big breakout game, he was our post-game guest with myself and Brian. And I asked him, I said, why did you choose Illinois? You had a lot of suitors coming after you. He was like, Deon, I chose Illinois because I know I could shoot. I know I could score, but I needed to learn how to elevate my game. And part of that came from playing defense. And when he first hit campus, he could not play defense. He has been very, very good, both on the ball and in weak side help defense so far. Have you seen those same things? I mean, I know you've covered basketball, but I think you've seen enough basketball to know if somebody has improved at a position or not.
Yeah, he's definitely taking strides, and he'll even tell you it's just a matter of making sure that he's dialed in possession after possession and not, maybe falling asleep or taking a play off. But he's a guy that has the ability because he can move. Like, he can move his feet. He's strong in the upper body. It's about being able to fight through screens and everything. But he's definitely in a different place right now compared to where he was earlier on in the season. And for a guy that I know that when he shot that off the side of the backboard at Marquette and was already having defensive struggles, like, oh boy, is he going to come along? But now find a better transfer in the country. I was looking through CBS Sports. It listed the top 85 transfers in college basketball heading into this year. He wasn't even on the list. I can't find one that's been more impactful, more productive over the last 3 weeks.
Oh no, definitely not. I mean, his and not just his individual numbers, what he brings to and means to this team is huge. I've noticed one wrinkle that has really been a staple for Illinois since those early losses is he's lining up on Kofi's side, which is very similar to what Coach Henson would do with myself and Tom Michaels. We both, because now you can't help. And if you do help, Kofi, as you mentioned, 5 assists last year. He's already up to 9 this year. So he's surpassed his entire total from last season he will kick the ball out and has shown an ability to not just kick it out, but to give it to shooters where they need it in their shooting pocket. And now you line them up with Alfonso on his side and Granderson on that other side. And it's as we mentioned earlier, it's a pick your poison. And they're killing them right now.
Yeah, that seems like a cheat code. When you have a guy that you can't guard one-on-one in the post and you try to help and you're going to kick it out to one of the deadliest shooters out there. And his confidence right now is, he does the little arrow out to the fans after every single three. He's feeling it, and his quick release, he's got great elevation when he goes up on that jumper. And he's just a guy that is playing such a vital role. And with Curbelo out, that's been great and really speaks to, again, I know we've talked about it over the years, like Orlando Antigua was a guy that was very vital in bringing him here. Same with Curbelo, Andres Feliz, Kofi, like that, really putting a stamp on the program. So that's been a credit to Orlando as well.
Oh, no doubt. Big O was my man. Hated to see him go, but I'll tell you now, I love what's going on here, man. The staff that Brad brought in, I mean, it's when you have to replace all of your assistant coaches, you never know what you're going to get, but Brad has done a great job. Of course, I know he said his first call was to Trent. Oh my God, to Chester Frazier, I know was his first call. Bringing home an Illini I thought was huge, but bringing home this particular one, because you remember Chester, hard-nosed, driven, tough. He's not going to back down to anyone. I remember that the handshake at center court with Eric Gordon when he smacked the fire out his hand. So what I love about that, not just what he brings, but those are the type of players he's going to recruit. One of the things, and you've heard Brad say it, is, oh, well, we lost because we needed to get tougher. We needed to have more drive. He's going to bring in those type of players, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, he's a dog, as they say. And that's something when a basketball coach says, in an evaluation, you're sitting courtside, Deon, you've been in that same position. You're like, that guy is a dog. That's one of the highest compliments you can give in basketball. And just competitive fire, a guy that's played in the jersey, knows what that's like. He's still getting out on the practice court and jumping in a defensive drill. His passion for Illinois is definitely very apparent. And yeah, he certainly relates to guys that are bred that type of way and want to win at all costs, are not afraid. And I've heard stories about back when he was a freshman coming in and facing a guy in D Brown who was like on the cover of Sporting News and all of that, and like not afraid to battle him practice after practice. So Chester has been, so far, has done a great job. He's done well on the recruiting trail, signing 2 top 100 guards, Jaden Epps and Sear Harris, and just watching his ability around the program. I know that Trent Frazier has been in heaven, having him right by his side, a guy that obviously loves defense as much as him. So I think that Chester's done a great job. And I agree with you. I completely agree that Brad did a phenomenal job of piecing this staff back together and being in a position to just continue to roll on.
And the one that's probably the least known, Jeff Alexander's been around the program for a while. And a lot of people don't understand how great of a coach he is. I mean, coming from his lineage. I mean, his father was an amazing coach. And of course, he played and went right into that same field. So he's learned a ton. And then working with Marty Simmons as long as he did over in Evansville, I mean, he learned a lot from some great coaches, and now with Brad. But the one that's probably the least known that I know probably the best is Tim Anderson. Tim is, he's not as, I won't say he's not as vocal as a Chester, but man, when he speaks, it speaks volumes. This young man carries a lot of weight in the city of Chicago. A lot of say, you need to recruit Chicago, but not with the understanding that Chicago is really broken into factions, and you have some people that can walk into some gyms and some that can't walk into others. This guy can walk into both gyms, and I think so far in his signings, with the transfer that's coming up from Baylor, the kid that's coming out, out of Chicago this year, he's done a heck of a job.
Tim's been great. You look at St. Rita, getting Merez Johnson, who's a very promising sophomore, getting him on board early. The fact that he's really good friends with James Brown, who those two are the top 2 sophomores in the state, and have him already recruiting him. So And then Ty Rodgers, like going into Michigan, I know that he's playing high school basketball in Chicago now, but to essentially take someone out of Michigan that Michigan State really wanted, that really doesn't happen, especially for fellow Big Ten programs. If one of the home state schools want that player, they usually go there. So that was a major message being sent right away that he's got some big time recruiting ties and a lot of respectability with his workout development history. You know, like the fact that he's worked out with Derrick Rose and Anthony Davis and other guys, that certainly speaks volumes. So someone that knows how to get people better. You talk to recruits and what they want to know is usually they want to win and they want to get to the NBA. So they want guys that they can trust to get the most out of their game. And Tim is certainly someone with a very good track record of doing that. And to your point of what he did at DePaul, like Mean Streets is where he's from. He was the program director and coach there, has a lot of great ties, but also, I mean, he got Charlie Moore to transfer from Kansas to DePaul and had Ahmad Bynum, those are two Mac Irvin Fire guys. And if you know anything about the city of Chicago and the basketball community, like there is some tension and some rivalries and some lines that some people can't cross. But like you said, Tim is someone that is respected by everybody up there.
Oh yeah, he is. I mean, and this bodes well for us. We continue to move forward. The recruiting that we have done since Brad has been here, man. And Josh made reference to it the other day when we had the basketball reunion. Is in year two, Coach lost the most games ever in the history of the University of Illinois. And then the next year, he completely flipped it on his ear and did the same thing. In his time, I've had a couple of my freshman records go down, one to Georgie, one to Kofi. That shows the level of recruiting that Brad, one, is known for, but two, has really stepped up in hiring the right people to be able to make those connections, those relationships with those kids and coaches and their families, and really starting to get some he's getting some high level guys on campus. But what's even more important is he getting guys that fits his everyday guy moniker. Don't you think?
Yeah, 100%. And sometimes it's hard to merge as you get high profile guys that maybe aren't bought into the day by day grind, the little things, the things that he demands. And he's someone that demands a lot out of you, and he's going to get on you when you're not producing. And some guys don't like to hear that. I think that some people would say that that's gotten more and more rare over the years. Maybe guys in AAU, high school, don't get told anything bad about their game or anything coming up. Not saying that happens everywhere, but for them to get players and be able to sell a vision before they even won, the fact that they got Io before they had really reached the top and Kofi. And then once they got up there, once they climbed the ladder in the Big Ten, just to be able to sustain that. I know that, people in Illini Nation talk a lot about when you were winning at the top of the top in 2005 and not be able to stay up there because of maybe some of the recruiting failures or just the misses over the years. Brad's put himself in a position to be able to sustain and be able to stay in the top of the food chain in the Big Ten. And he's finding guys that are tough. He's finding guys that want to win. And finding guys that want to be at Illinois. Now the program is back to a point of you have more pull, you're sexier, whatever you want to say, whether it be in Chicago or nationally. So, but yeah, big credit, like Chin Coleman in Chicago was huge. Tim Anderson now being able to do the same thing. Orlando having a pull outside of your regional area. And I think that Chester can do the same thing. And I think that we're going to see that Jeff Alexander can recruit as well as we go forward.
Yeah, he was a big time. He did a great job of recruiting over at Evansville. So, in the relationships that he's built, you talk about one of the great things with this program, which I wouldn't say is different from others, but it's different from a lot, is the ability to help kids get better. I mean, you look at Io's growth from freshman to sophomore year. You look at Kofi's growth from freshman to sophomore year. You look at now Jacob Granderson's continued growth and how he's played. You look at DeMonte's growth as a player. To bring in and have someone not just like Tim Anderson, but like Jeff Alexander, because Jeff has really, we look at Kofi's free throws from last year to this year. You look at his ability to go on left hand and right hand jump hook around the basket. A lot of that continued improvement and how comfortable he's gotten with doing it comes with that development from Jeff Alexander. So you nailed it right on the head, Derek. The development, the growth, and what these kids that are now coming into college basketball or will be coming into college basketball wants is to make sure that their coach can help them get better and can help them move on to the next level. So before we close out this segment, we had a great quote, or no, I wouldn't call it an interview with Ayo Dosunmu after one of the Bulls games, where he praised Coach. How did you feel when you saw that? I mean, because you're an Illini fan. Yes, you cover Illinois now, but you grew up an Illini fan. How did that make you feel? Because I know it made me feel over the moon. And the first thing I thought was, man, I hope somebody's recording that so they could play it for the next incoming recruit.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And as someone that watched Io, back as a sophomore at Morgan Park, before he was top 50 in the country or whatever it might be, see him living his dream, and you saw how hard he worked throughout high school and then obviously at Illinois and all that he was able to accomplish, and just to see him reach that pinnacle of the place that he wanted to ultimately reach is really, really cool. And the fact that Illinois was able to play a part in helping him get there. And then, I mean, being around him, we both got an opportunity to be very close around him when he was here at Illinois, and all the great accomplishments, the great shots. The fact that he's now on the NBA stage representing Illinois and the Illinois brand, and letting people know, not being bashful about where he came from, like that is a big, big recruiting sell for the Illini. And I think back when I was younger watching Darren Williams on the NBA stage, and how much that was so cool for Illini fans to have that guy to be able to tune in and watch. And I think it's the same thing. And it really goes, it's the perfect story where, would you like to see him go in the first round? Absolutely. Should he have? I think everybody would say yes now, people passing on him. But for him to be able to go to the Bulls, stay home, be around his family, how tight knit that group is, and then represent, anytime he's given a ring endorsement in Chicago about Illinois basketball, that bodes well for the future of the program. And that kids are looking up to him, same way that I know he's got a long ways to go until he's an NBA star, but like the way he looked up to Derrick Rose, and when you got someone in that kind of a role, it means a lot for the basketball community. So really, really cool for Io.
Yeah. Before we move on to the next topic, let me tell you guys a little bit about our partners over at Bet Rivers Sportsbook. If you haven't signed up with Bet Rivers yet, now's the time, because they are offering a $250 match bonus for your first deposit. But what sets them apart is that they require just one playthrough to turn your bonus into cash money. With their new Rush Pay instant approval, withdrawing your winnings is safer, more secure, and more reliable. With basketball season in flow, and get in the action by signing up on betrivers.com today or downloading the BetRivers iOS app. You must be 21 years or older to play. And if you have a gambling problem, please call 1-800-GAMBLER. So, Derek, one of the things that has really, we talk about COVID. Last year is so nice to be back in the State Farm Center and in every other arena around the country to have fans back. But now we have this new variant kicking in. And it has already started to reap a little havoc here in the Big Ten. We've had several cancellations last week. Can you give me a little bit about what you have covered, what you know, and if you know any direction that the Big Ten may be going in as far as rescheduling these games or not? What happened last year. So I think they would probably be a little bit more apt to probably get some games played, since I'm going to say it, gave the trophy to the wrong team.
Yeah.
In the regular season. Have you heard anything that's taken place right now from the Big Ten?
I haven't heard too much. It's really going to be interesting to see the way that they approach it, because you have the different rule in place with the forfeiture. If you have a team that isn't able to play games, and all of a sudden you're giving wins in a Big Ten title race to certain teams sometimes when you can't obviously control an outbreak that would happen. So that's going to be interesting to see their approach there. It obviously, the first thing that comes to mind is just you're scared for the thought of not having fans and any type of reaction to. I mean, you want the players ultimately to be safe. That's the first and foremost. But I remember what those arenas were like last year in comparison. I mean, the Arizona game, the atmosphere, it was phenomenal. It was how college basketball is supposed to be. Not having Illinois, Iowa at the State Farm Center, and there's you, me, and maybe 20 other people in there to see it. So that's the thing that's come to mind for me. But I'm not really sure. You're seeing professional leagues do different things. You're seeing the NFL now decide that they're going to have, if asymptomatic players, even if you test positive, you're asymptomatic and you're vaccinated, you're going to be able to play. I don't think we're going to see that in college basketball, but it's going to be something to continue to monitor, and hopefully it's something that isn't going to get out of hand here as we push further into the winter. But it's unpredictable, Deon. It's kind of scary when you think about it.
No, it definitely is, and like you mentioned, yeah, I remember how it was to not have fans in the stands, and definitely do not want to go back to that. It's a scary thought to even think about something like that, because it just takes not just so much away from the players on the court, but the effect that it has on these athletic departments around the country, because they end up losing a lot of money because ticket sales and merchandise sales, and not to mention food in the concession stand. It just affects so many different people. So no, definitely don't want to see us go back to that. And I know from being a player and watching these guys that are playing now, they are having much more fun playing in front of the crowds, as you mentioned, that Arizona atmosphere, than they did last year, or would have if we've had a taste of crowds being in the stands, and now you have to go empty. That would not be good, and I'm sure that's not something that anybody wants to see. But as we move on to a little bit different of a topic, we got this next game coming up. Huge game. I went 1-3 in this series. Illinois has lost the last 3, I believe,
Yep.
To Mizzou. Have you had an opportunity to see Mizzou at all this year? I saw them play on television, but have you, in your capacity, been able to see them this year?
I've seen them a little bit and checked in on some of their scores. I saw that they were playing Liberty and were down 35-14 at halftime. This is a team that's really struggled offensively. Now, they are coming off a win. They did get a win in their last game against Utah, which is one of the better victories of their season so far. So I'm sure they're feeling good about the fact that they are rolling in with a little bit of positive momentum into this game. Kobe Brown played really well for them. He's a 6'7" forward that had 23 points in that game, and actually played well last year against Illinois. Had about 12 points, 8 rebounds. So as a 4-man, you do always look at that matchup quite a lot. And we talked about Coleman Hawkins earlier. I think that matchup will be interesting. And one that he's going to have to rise to the occasion. Of course, Javon Pickett, you can't really watch him the rest of the season because he's just a totally different guy when he sees the orange and blue. A guy from the state of Illinois who has just played the games of his season against Illinois for whatever reason, or I think we know the reason. So that one's there to watch, but they're a team that doesn't have Xavier Penson anymore. I thought he was a really nice point guard out of Chicago. Now at LSU, Jeremiah Tillman's moved on. Mark Smith's moved on. So I haven't seen them a ton. I've looked a lot at their numbers, and they've actually turned the ball over. They're one of the few high major teams out there that's turned the ball over more than Illinois has so far this year. They don't shoot the 3 all that well. And we know that in the past, it's Conzo's teams have been more defensive minded, rebounding, and some of the issues for Illinois is they've just gotten out physical in those games, and had a team in Missouri that just wanted it more. So I know that Illinois is pretty cognizant of that, at least based on their post game comments after St. Francis, and I think they'll be ready to play. Mizzou on paper, and I know that you can't do that really sometimes in rivalries. Some of that gets thrown out, but on paper, Illinois is a major mismatch for this Missouri team.
I would agree. They don't match up with the size, and this Illinois team now is shooting the ball so much better than what they were last season. And Mizzou's given up, close to 40% from the three-point line to their opponents. So that's going to be a huge problem for them. And as you mentioned, they haven't really been able to score the basketball. They got 2 players, if I'm not mistaken, in double figures, maybe 3. But what I think this team brings, and as you mentioned, that they've gotten out physical, that they've played against a team that was hungrier. And that's what they're going to face this time as well. I mean, Mizzou has always played a lot tougher, and as I mentioned, a lot more, lot hungrier than more hungry than this Illini team. And I think there's a lot of storylines that were there before, as you mentioned, Javon Pickett. I mean, Javon Pickett was signed with Illinois when John Gross was here, and when that change was made, he was gone as well as some of the others, including, it was reported that Conzo Martin wanted this job, and then he didn't get it because we hired Brad. But so there were a lot of storylines that kind of made this personal. So I'll say this: I'm glad to hear you say that, because I didn't hear very many of the comments after the basketball game last week, for guys to really understand how important this rivalry is. I mean, for me, having played in it, having, lost my senior year game in triple overtime, I mean, it stings. And it stings every time we take an L to this Mizzou team. So I'm hoping the guys that are there now, the Trent Frazier's, the DeMonte Williams, they're able to really, and Kofi's a junior now. He's been through two of these things, can really help them understand how important this game is. So it's good to hear that they're amping themselves up and are going to be ready to go. And unfortunately, I'm not going to be, I was supposed to be on the call, but I don't know if you guys could tell, I'm under the weather. So I had to cancel that trip, and I'm actually going to get tested to make sure that it's not COVID. I'm here in a couple of hours, but I'm going to have to miss the Mizzou game, and I am not happy about it, not one bit. Boy.
Man, sorry to hear that, Deon.
Yeah, we had the basketball reunion, and so it was just a lot of hanging out with, guys from all over the country. You don't know who may have it, who may not have it, but we'll see. Hopefully I do not have it in this. It's more of just a little bit of a flu bug than anything else. You never wish. This might be the first time we ever start wishing that we catch the flu as opposed to something else. But no, man, this is a big game coming up. But after Illinois finishes with this game, they have another non-conference game before we hop back into Big Ten. So we get this game, and then we come back, of course, against then we come back against Florida A&M. What do you think Illinois has to continue to do from what you've seen to get ready as we flow back into the Big Ten? Because we're going to kick it off and we're going real fast. I mean, we got Maryland. Then you have to run up against, Minnesota, then you run up against Maryland. Two of those teams are playing really well, especially that Minnesota team.
Yeah, they are playing well. And I think that they went on the road and beat Michigan in Ann Arbor. So defensively is really where I'm looking at, because this was a team that you would have expected to be one of the best defensive teams in the country last year. I think on paper, defensive efficiency, they were top 10, and preseason they were really in the top 5. But right now they're more in that 35 to 40 range. So Brad continues to point the finger at that area of the floor and being able to be more sound, more consistent. St. Francis didn't have the firepower that some of their previous opponents had. So I don't want to say everything was fixed, because they did play pretty well defensively in that game. But Missouri maybe is going to be aggressive in transition. Can you stop the ball? I think pick and roll coverage is something they got to continue to get better at. So that's really where I'm looking at. I think maybe you'll learn more even on the internal side of this, if you're at Brad Underwood's perspective, over the next 2 weeks, is just continue to grind these guys in practice. Not that, the Missouri game's huge. You got to be able to perform in that. But in terms of the Florida A&M game and just getting ready for Big Ten play, locking in defensively, continue to be accountable there, be able to be more sound there. And then I think you still look at some guys that can give you a little bit more, and that's Coleman Hawkins. I think that getting him some confidence, getting him to be able to understand what it takes to play extended minutes and not making the same defensive mistakes, and not maybe understanding that maybe one mistake's going to happen, but you can't let that derail your perspective, because I think that's been part of his struggles of just being a guy that's been getting really frustrated with himself, and one thing leads to another. So DeMonte Williams has got to get the three ball going to continue this maturation of the offense. A guy that led the country in three-point shooting last year has only been 29% so far. So if you can get him going from three, you're all the more dangerous. And any minutes, I think you look at non-conference play, more minutes for Luke Goody, RJ Melendez, that adds to your depth. And then of course, on the practice court whenever you can get Curbelo back. That's going to happen within the next 2 weeks. That would be obviously a big key. So defensively, getting some guys to step up that are maybe not feeling the best about their game or just need some more run. I think that's kind of the biggest things I'm looking for.
Yeah, I'm hoping, like you, that those guys get ready to, continue to step up. Oh, Jake Granderson, who's playing with so much confidence right now. I mean, he's averaging 13, 14 points a game, but he does so many things. He and DeMonte are kind of those glue guys. So I'm with you on DeMonte getting himself back in rhythm. I think he's just been a little out of rhythm, and then Jake continuing to play the way he has. But, the thing I'm looking at is what happens when Kofi goes to the bench. I've been really pleased with the way Benjamin Verdonk has stepped in. He's done an excellent job, especially on the offensive glass, and really working hard and making guys work hard on defense. And now, Omar is kind of, and I continue to say this, I love him as a player. I think his future is so bright that he could be, but Florida did him a disservice because they did not help this young man get better. I mean, he was raked ahead of Kofi coming out, and he is, and I watched him play. And he's very similar to the same player he was when he came out, but he will not be that working with Tim Anderson and with Jeff Alexander. He's going to get better, but for us to make a deep run, you mentioned some names before, but I think these two are also going to be really important to us continuing to climb that ladder and grow, just to get, from giving Kofi positive rest is what I like to call it. Because if he can go over there and sit down, and these guys, the better they play, the more times he get to sit over there and rest before we have to rush him back on the court. And when he's rested, he is an absolute, he ain't a dog. He's a monster. And there's nothing anybody can do about it.
Yeah, that's a great point. And I think that you look at going on the road in the Big Ten, and Kofi's done a great job throughout his career of not fouling all that frequently. It's going to happen sometime. You're maybe going to get one or two that you disagree with. You're playing maybe at Indiana or Purdue or whatever, and what's Omar going to be able to do, or Benjamin Bossman's Verdonk? I think that's a big key. And even teams that have the depth of a Purdue, I mean, if you're going to talk about trying to win the Big Ten, they're going to have Zach Edey, they're going to have Travion Williams. You're going to have to be able to have someone behind Kofi come in and give you very serviceable minutes. I love the fact that Ben is doing some of the things that you want out of Omar. Like, Ben is not afraid to hit somebody. He's going to be physical. He's going to play hard. He's going to have the motor up, and he's not making as many mistakes. I think Omar sometimes gets caught thinking too much, or sometimes isn't as physical on the glass as you would like a guy of that size to be. I fully agree with you that he has just a lot of natural talent, a lot of natural athleticism. They just got to be able to get more out of him. So I think it is a little bit concerning. Not that I'm freaking out too much that it hasn't clicked for him, or you're still not seeing sustained signs of growth out of Omar to this point. But I will, on the same side of the coin, say that Ben's been more productive or more reliable than I would have expected him to be. So those guys being able to provide some depth in the front court are important. And Brad even said here recently, there are going to be some big physical four men when you get into Big Ten play, and Ben might even need to play a little bit of four. I know at least when he's on the court with Kofi, he can feed him the ball. That's one thing that he's been very, very good at.
Yeah, he has the skill level to be able to move the basketball. I mean, he's a European basketball player, man.
Yeah.
I played over there for 14 years, so I know what he knows. So it's just a matter of him stepping out there and being able to be comfortable and making those passes and swinging it. But yeah, I love what he's doing so far. And, Omar had a great stat line. And I think if he could think of it in this way, then he will continue to improve and get better as we go. I can't remember the game, so Illini Nation, forgive me, but he had 0 points. He had 0 turnovers. He had 7 rebounds and should have had 2 block shots in that game. One was Rutgers, yes. And I was like, okay. And he had those 7 rebounds in like 9 minutes. If we can get him to play and be active as he was in that game, then he will definitely be able to play some serviceable minutes. But I love, like you mentioned, the physicality that Ben has brought has been helpful. The last thing, what do you think? And I'm high on this team. And let me say this first and foremost. I was I was high on them at the beginning. I'm still high on them because I think through all of the adversity to have only lost 3 games to 3 really good teams shows where the direction where this team could be. What do you see out of this Illinois team as they move forward?
For me, I'm in the same boat as you. I picked them to win the Big Ten going into the year. I had Purdue second, Michigan third. Purdue has obviously been a monster. They have been a little bit more human here recently when they lost at Rutgers and they went to overtime against NC State. But Jaden Ivey is a guy that's going to be a problem. And I think even from Illinois, from a matchup standpoint, that's something that they're going to have to deal with. But I have Illinois fighting in the Big Ten title race. I have them at the very top with Purdue. I think it's them and then maybe a little bit separation before you talk about Ohio State, Michigan State, and Michigan's going to have to figure it out. But I'm still very high on Illinois. I think that their upside is still towards the top of college basketball. Could they go on a run and still get to New Orleans in the Final Four? I think they can. I think that that's still within their capacity. It's just going to be some keys with Curbelo coming back. When does that happen? What does he look like when he ultimately gets back? Because he hasn't been practicing. So being able to just build him up and get him back into playing in games and being able to make the right decisions and make some shots. I love the fact that they've got some other guys going around the perimeter. Their 3-point shooting is up there as high as anybody in the high major rankings. So I think that's a big deal, putting that around Kofi. I think they got to get better defensively, but I think they're capable. I think that's a good thing to look at as well. So I look at them as a team that you're very happy with 2-0 starting the Big Ten. If you can steal one on the road at Minnesota, you're going to be setting up. There's a chance that you're 5-0 in the Big Ten title race with Purdue and Michigan coming to town, and there's a lot of control in your hands in that standpoint. So I think they'll be, chasing Purdue. I think they'll be neck and neck as we go along, and I still think this upside is very, very high. And while there's been some disappointments and some things to deal with as far as sickness and injury, they've gotten through that. They've been able to grow, and I still very bullish on this team overall.
Well, that's good to hear. Illini Nation, you heard it from my man, Derek Piper. We are still high on the Illini, and you should be too, especially with this team shooting free throws the way they are. We know that was a coal in their shoe last year. They are a lot better from the line this year. The 3-point shooting is up. They are knocking it down, and they're still one of the top rebounding teams in the country. All of those things, as they continue to get better defensively, get healthy, then that's going to make them real hard to beat. DP, one of the things I like to do, man, is give the last minute to my guests. It's all yours, big fella. Go ahead. Whatever you want to address to Illini Nation, the mic is yours.
I just want to say thank you for having me on, Deon. I'm going to turn this back on you and say Deon's the man, one of the nicest people out there. It's great to be able to interact with him, to be able to talk here on this podcast is an honor. And it's one of the great things about Illinois basketball is just having these great representatives of the program to still be around. It was awesome to see Lucas Johnson and Corey Bradford and all those guys back in the building. That shows how special and awesome Illinois basketball is. And I get to be a part of it from covering it, from being very close to the program. So I'm very appreciative of that, very appreciative of all the fans out there, the passion they have for Illinois basketball and Big Ten basketball. So I'm blessed to do what I do, to be able to talk to you, be able to write for 24/7 and talk on the radio about this team. It's a blessing. So I'll just say, I hope everyone enjoys this. I hope everyone has a great holiday season. Merry Christmas to everybody. And let's just continue to enjoy watching this team and look forward to bragging rights and then Big Ten basketball.
Derek Piper, Illini Nation. Derek, I appreciate you, man. I truly appreciate the kind words. For those that are out there, make sure if you are not following Derek, make sure you find him on Instagram, on Twitter with 24/7 Sports. He is great. He lays it down. He really does an excellent job of covering Illinois basketball. So, Derek, I appreciate you for being on here with me, my friend. And for those of you that have not yet followed my host, well, I guess not my host, but who carry my podcast with the Field of 68 Media, you need to check them out. Like them, subscribe to them. They have a lot of great content. In my opinion, and I may be a little biased, I think Champagne on Ice might be at the top of that list, but they got a lot of other great things going on too. But no, seriously, like them, subscribe to them. Field of 68 Media, they do an excellent job of covering college sports. And for my sponsors out there, I am truly appreciative, excuse me, truly appreciative of Sportsbook for what they do and for being there with me and covering and sharing this program, allowing me to share this program with others. Thank you so much. And if you don't follow Champagne on Ice, then you need to go ahead and find it. Like, subscribe, leave some comments. I'm always open to listening and trying to get better. If there are some interviews that you want me to take that I don't or have not had, please find me on social media and let me know, because we want to make this the best for you as possible. And last but not least, we're going to close this out. Have a very, very Merry Christmas. Have a very, very happy new year. I hope that you're prosperous in all that you do. May God bless. Thank you for listening to us, and keep it going. Illini Nation, love, peace, and Merry